enough already. I think these are, I don't know. I think one of these conferences is much easier to pick a couple of favorites than the other. But we can start ACC and then we'll go Big 12, which is certainly more convoluted. And I want to get your take on the Big 12. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if our top three ACCs are pretty similar. I don't know if you threw a wild card in there. I mean, it all kind of starts and ends with Clemson in the ACC. Until we kind of see what happens with Beck, it's tough for me to say that Miami is on their level. Miami's also, attacking the portal incredibly hard in this spring transfer window. I think they kind of know. I mean, you can kind of read writing on the wall, right? Like, I think Miami's a good team trying to become a great team to stack depth and get better in certain places where they're lacking. So I'm not super confident in Miami being a national title contender. I certainly think they're an ACC contender right behind Clemson. And then I've got Louisville as my third one. I don't know if you deviate from that at all, but I like Miller Moss. I think that they can certainly compete for it. Their schedule is tough. They got to play both Clemson and Miami. That's what makes their road the toughest. But, I've got no confidence in Florida State. I think SMU drops back a little bit with a little bit tougher of a schedule, having to play Miami this year. They play Louisville as well. I'm not sold on Georgia Tech being able to get fully over the hump. I don't know that I buy all the way into North Carolina. Things seem like they could go on an unlikely run. But I mean, not to just copy Vegas, but Clemson, Miami, Louisville. I tried to figure out a way to not put Louisville in or not put Miami in. I just couldn't see a team that I was confident enough in. But I don't know if you have a different take than that.
A little bit. Naturally, it's Clemson. And Clemson's earned that right. And they've earned that right for a while because of the way that they've been able to respond. And I think that we also have asked Dabo to change his ways so he can stay in the game. And he does. And we still are trying to nitpick what he's done wrong. Well, keep in mind that when you look at the ACC, it really does feel like as long as you're able to withstand a couple of close calls against SEC opponents, you're going to go. You have, in my opinion, the best quarterback in college football in Kate Klubnik returning. You have very, very good wide receivers for the first time in probably 7 or 8 years. Your defense is going to be better on paper in terms of production, not just because of veteranship with guys like Peter Woods coming back, but you brought in Tom Allen. And Tom Allen, whether or not you think that he is an overrated head coach, he's a good defensive mind that I think is going to pair well with Garrett Riley on the opposing side. Two other coordinators that were brought in from the outside and completely differ from Dabo's previous ways of going about building a foundation. And I think their schedule is manageable. I agree with you on Louisville. I actually have Louisville at number 2 because Louisville is one of these slept-on teams where their schedule is so challenging. But let's just say they split it. Let's just say they go 1-1 during that span. They have a shot to go to Charlotte. They go to Charlotte, they get that win. They're in the college football playoff. I believe that there's a part of what went wrong last season out in California that really wasn't on Miller Moss. That was just bad play calling. That was just insufficient wide receiver play. That was just bad execution. And because of he had been in Lincoln Riley's system forever, he took the brunt force of it because of somebody had to be the sacrificial lamb to save Riley's imaging and to save his persona. I think that there is also something to be said about what a guy in Jeff Brom, who's a very underappreciated coach in the world of college football, constantly get into that 8-9 win range, whether it be at Purdue or at Louisville. He has a knack of working with transfer portal quarterbacks. Jack Plummer, Tyler Shuck just got drafted top 40. Miller Moss is his next pet project. And I think that also they have some really good, talented playmakers. We did not get to see all of Colin Lacey last year from South Alabama. Having him fully healthy, I think, is going to do wonders for this passing attack. You also have a really good run game. Isaac Brown, for my money, maybe the second or third best running back in college football. He's far and away the best running back when you talk about the ACC. But then you mentioned another team. And I'm actually buying into Georgia Tech. I am. There's something about just the way that they spent this offseason actually addressing major needs. And they went about it with not only putting money where their mouth is by bringing in up-and-coming rising stars from the recruiting cycle, a couple 4-stars, 1 5-star offensive lineman, who, again, Brent Key, offensive line coach. Guess what? He's going to know how to be able to make this work. So you throw that in there, and then you throw in some of the transfers. Eric Rivers is one of my favorite transfers that they just added in general. Great player last year at FIU. They also brought in one of his teammates, if I'm not mistaken. It was the Dean Patterson. Had a couple of other big 125-yard games. They got a good run game with Jamal Haynes, and they got a veteran quarterback when it comes to Haynes King. And Haynes, at this point, he's a what you see is what you get type of dude. You know who he is as a passer. You know who he is as a runner. You know what works and you know what doesn't. You also didn't lose Buster Faulkner, which I thought was a really under-the-radar move to keep that team out in Atlanta pretty much keeping momentum. Their schedule Colorado week 1, Clemson in week 3, Duke, North NC State, which I think will be better, Pitt, Georgia. If you go 3-2 in that span, there is an opportunity for you to make it to Charlotte, win that final matchup, and go to the college football playoff. This to me feels like the most complete version we have seen of Georgia Tech, and I just am not understanding why there's not enough national attention talking about what the Yellow Jackets are doing down in Atlanta.
If King can stay healthy, obviously you know what kind of gamer he is, because even through the injuries last year, and I mean Pyron coming in, and you know you had your backups were hurt and still coming in and doing what they did to Miami. Their fight is incredible, and obviously they beat FSU early before we kind of knew what Florida State was. But their fight in that game was, I mean, they pushed a still very talented FSU team that hadn't quit yet around, and so yeah, and then obviously you think about what they did against Georgia. It's to me, it's getting over those sleeper games that they have, you know, and that's tough for every college football team. Let's be honest. Right? Everybody loses a game you're not supposed to outside of your Oregons at times and just where, you know, whoever. But I think that's the biggest thing is can they, I wouldn't be surprised at all if they go 3-2 in that, but they can't have the stupid loss along the way, right, you know, against Manny Diaz and Duke or just whomever, right? Like
they can't go beat Clemson at home by 10 points and then a week and a half later lose to Wake Forest. Right. You can't have that happen. And that's what stops a lot of these teams that we talk about in such a light that we want to give them credit that we can't, because if they just find a way to fundamentally shoot themselves. You know, TJ, a lot of the times we talk about all these teams like being even keel. They're really not. It's just a couple of bad plays and some luck for a bad team that ends up allowing you to pull away and get a victory. I mean, that was the case last year with BYU. They had an opportunity to go to the college football playoff. They shot themselves in the foot down the stretch. It wasn't that they were a terrible team or that Kansas was so much better than them. It was that, hey, you had a really bad game plan, and it finally all came to come roosting at the wrong time. That's Georgia Tech right now, and you can't afford to have that.
You didn't mention Miami, and I did. Thoughts on them quickly. That, you know, we'll do a Miami preview at some point this offseason, but just thoughts there?
A couple things. Number one, just their schedule in general. People are sleeping on that Notre Dame matchup in week 1. That's really going to be an effect to making the college football playoff. It may not do anything towards your conference schedule, but when you think about what it could mean to you getting to Charlotte or for you being an at-large bid, the thing with an SMU squad was that they handled business against non-con teams and they went all the way down to the wire, and then they only had the 2 losses, and one of them was in the conference championship, and they were undefeated in conference play to where it wasn't that big of a deal. So how are you going to be able to withstand the Florida game? How are you going to be able to withstand the Notre Dame game? Are you going to be able to play well against a Duke team or a Syracuse team or whoever you have to face off against en route to getting to Charlotte? And then when you're there, can you win the title? Because if you lose those 2 games, we're not putting a 3-loss ACC team in. I like what they've added in defensively. I love what they were able to do to get rid of Lance Guidry and bring in the defense coordinator from Minnesota. Featherman, I think, is going to be a really, really good fit. I think their offensive line will be fine. I think they'll still have a stable run game. And I will say, the recent addition that they just brought in with the BYU kid, the all-purpose transfer, that's going to do wonders for Shannon Dawson's passing attack. But you're asking me to put, number one, a lot of faith in Carson Beck being fully healthy from the get-go. And number two, that this is still going to be an offense that doesn't allow big-time turnovers. How many times last year did Cam Ward deliver an exceptional performance and the defense fell short? Well, they fixed that defense this past year, but now you have to ask yourself, well, how many times did Carson Beck put the ball in harm's way? Was that just bad, inconsistent drops by wide receivers in Georgia? Was that just bad pass protection from the offensive line? Or was that just Carson Beck being who Carson Beck is? And all those factor in to where I think that you're looking at 9-3 once again and not 10-2. And if you're 10-2, you may have a shot. 9-3, you're not getting in the college football playoff in the ACC.
Yeah, their schedule is tough. They avoid Georgia Tech, who's beaten them the last 2 years. But that first 5 games, they've got Notre Dame and Florida, both at home. But they could, I mean, I could see any scenario. I could see 2-0, I could see 0-2, and I could see 1-1. Like, I literally could see any scenario. They get a bye, but then they go to Tallahassee. And I don't think Florida State wins that game. I'm certainly not playing that game right now. But if they've got a loss or 2 already, Miami teams historically have quit. Now, I don't think they quit the same way under Mario. But if they've got a loss, and say Florida State is 3-1 in that game, they've only lost to Bama, I think that, I mean, Miami's season could, I mean, they could be 5-0 after that Florida State game. their season could be off the rails after that game. And
Yeah.
so I think we'll know a lot early. Then they've got the game against Louisville at home. They got to go to SMU. It's tough. They got to go to Blacksburg, which I know Brent Pry, we'll talk about hot seat in a minute, but I know that Blacksburg's not like sky high right now, but that's still never an easy place to play in November. So Miami will be interesting. I'll let you start with the Big 12.
Number one easily is still Arizona State. And the main reason why is that, yes, we can talk about the other team that is going to be number two. But when you return 85% production, you don't lose either coordinator, and you still have your starting quarterback. To me, that automatically sets you apart. I think that Sam Lovett is a top 5 passer in college football returning in 2025. The way that he plays the game, the way he carries himself, the fit in Kenny Dillingham's system, I think is going to do wonders. And a lot of people are questioning, well, can he actually lead these game-winning drives? Here's a better question for you, TJ. Did he have to last year when you have a guy like Cam Scattaboo that is just able to take over moments and capitalize on his success? But that doesn't mean that he can't. I love that Jordan Tyson's going to be back here fully healthy. They brought in some really good transfers. The Army running back is going to come replace Cam Scattaboo. Their defense, it's not going to be elite by the standards of what we think for national championship pedigree, but I still feel like it's going to be one of the better overall defenses in the Big 12, especially for what they were able to retain. Number 2 is Texas Tech. Texas Tech is swinging. They are. And people don't realize Joey McGuire is going to be facing a little bit of pressure and a little bit of heat because they don't invest like this. They haven't had a 10-win season since 2008. They haven't been able to really be in the mechanism of national conversation outside of a few plays from Patrick Mahomes and an upset here or there. But they have the talent. Any player that you could imagine that was supposed to enter the transfer portal at least looked at Lubbock. And they said, we're going to put our money where our mouth is, and we're going to get better. They have a brand new starting center in the kid from Colorado. They got better at the wide receiver position. David Bailey comes on in, and he's the new edge rusher from Stanford. They feel really good about their running back room with Joyner coming on in from USC. Their linebacking room is better. Their secondary is better. They have a veteran quarterback in Baron Morton. And I still look at their schedule. I say there are some hiccups along the way. But when you have this much talent, if you feel that good about Mac Leftwich as your new offensive coordinator, who dominated Texas State last year, you should feel really good about at least being in that conversation last week of November to go to Arlington. And I think that they will. And then the third team is really interesting to me because there's a couple of ways I could have gone with this. But I went with my gut here. I just feel like Kansas State, so long as Chris Klieman is the head coach, it's really hard for me to go ahead and doubt him. Yes, I understand you lost some talent, no more DJ Giddens, but you didn't lose Avery Johnson. And Johnson may have been much like Nico Iamaleava. We put these expectations on his shoulders to be the next big-time force, and he was probably a year or two early. But that doesn't mean that he can't be effective. You feel really good about your running back room still with Dylan Edwards taking on a bigger role. I like some of the wide receivers that they added on in. They're going to be good defensively because that's just what we know about Chris Klieman-led teams. Kansas State, to me, still is in that pinnacle range of being a force to watch for in the Big 12. And as long as you have a coach that knows how to win, and he's won multiple championships, I'll tell you what, you're going to get to 9 wins in that conference.
So, yeah, what's so tough about the Big 12 is I feel like it's just so wide open. It's the most fun conference. Yeah. Like, I don't care what anybody says. Are there 70,000 draft picks like the, Big 10 or SEC? No, but it's still the most fun and wide open conference. I had Arizona State first as well. I had Kansas State second. I went with BYU number 3. And I'm not as big of I try not to buy so much into this, like just the culture. Man, I do think that's real. And I think it's so real at both Arizona State and BYU. And I love Kehlani Sitake. He's one of my favorites. I've probably mentioned BYU on here more than any other team but Florida State since we've been doing this show. But I love what he does there. I like Retzlaff. I think that they'll be really good. Missing from our list, I had Texas Tech like right outside of that. I went with those 3. But
BYU, to be fair, BYU was number 4 for me. So
yeah, I same top. Utah missing. I think that's an interesting one. You mentioned Texas Tech. We're going to talk about matchups here in a second, but Texas Tech's out of conference is pretty easy. I think their first conference matchup is that Utah one. Contrasting styles. Kind of a what the heck year for Utah, right? They're still getting a lot of love. They're still ranked really highly in Vegas and S&P Plus, but I think that's kind of a fun matchup.
Don't give it away. We got surprises later. Maybe we're going to see a Utah conversation.
Dude, could you imagine? But Utah missing from the list. Iowa State missing from the list. But again, what's so wide open about this conference is, Iowa State could be right back in it. There's no doubt. So that's what makes the Big 12 so much fun. If people aren't watching that conference, what are you doing with your lives?
With Iowa State, the only thing is that Rocco Becht. What are you going to do without two NFL wide receivers that just got drafted in the top 80 picks? Because that is such a big underlying thing. If he ends up living up to the same expectations and plays the way that he did last year with Chase Soule coming on in from ECU, I really still think that, again, this is a great defense and it's a great culture led by Matt Campbell that carries a lot of weight, the same way that it does out in the Bell Edwards Stadium with Kalani Sitake. But I gotta see it. I know what I'm getting in the most part when it comes to the defense and the offensive line for BYU. I know what I'm getting in parts of Baylor, even a little bit. I know what I'm getting into Colorado this year, and even a little bit, I would say, of Utah. I don't know what I'm getting at the quarterback position for Iowa State now without two legit Sunday players helping out a quarterback that may or may not be slightly overrated, underrated. We're going to find out a lot about who Rocco Becht is this year.